Chapter 210. The killing intent that Kenyi exuded was almost tangible, and even the most resolute person would have goosebumps. However, his eyes were extremely clear, as if he was a pure infant, merging the two contradictory qualities together. This was because he was a natural saber user, drawing his saber only to kill all enemies and reach the supreme pinnacle of saber arts. Such a temperament, Ling Han felt it from the setting sun saber emperor. It didn't mean that Kenyi would definitely become the second setting sun saber emperor, but at least he had such potential. If he could be nurtured like the setting sun saber emperor, but if he stayed in rain country his whole life, then the spiritual pedestal tier would definitely be his pinnacle achievement. Ling Han's sword moved very slowly because he was resisting Kenyi's killing intent, and sweat involuntarily dripped from his forehead. In a battle of the same tier, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious, not to mention that Ling Han's tier was much lower, so he was naturally under great pressure. But the more it was so, the brighter Ling Han's eyes became, as if they could shoot through the sky. These two lunatics, monsters. Guang Yuan was secretly speechless, and such a thought rose in his mind. If his cultivation was suppressed to the same level as the two of them, he definitely wouldn't have the courage to fight either one of them. Just the aura he exuded was enough to make people despair. Kenyi never lied. Xiao, he moved, striking with his saber. The cold light was like water, sprinkling towards Ling Han. As expected, he wouldn't give Ling Han the chance to accumulate power and use that sword move. In his eyes, as long as he drew his saber, that person was an enemy, and against enemies, he would go all out and completely destroy them. That was death. His eyes were still clear, without a hint of killing intent, but the saber he brandished was like the god of death, brandishing a sickle to reap human life. Ling Han decisively did not continue to unleash his sword technique, because he would at most be able to unleash a third of it before he would be sliced in half at the waist, and his blood would splatter everywhere. However, this was all within his expectations. He opened his left hand, and a flash of black light surged out, actually forming a curtain of cloth in front of him. Then, it wrapped around his whole body, forming a sphere. Bam! The saber slashed down, but the black sphere was incredibly tough, and actually did not split open. However, under the powerful shock, this sphere was sent flying high into the air along with Ling Han. Xiao, the sphere in midair suddenly changed, rapidly opening up, actually turning into a large umbrella, and the momentum of the fall was greatly reduced. Ling Han was like a flying immortal, slowly descending from the sky and steadily landing on the ground. The big black umbrella immediately retracted and turned into a ring on his hand. Wah! Ling Han still spat out a mouthful of blood. Even though he'd used the blood-sucking origin gold to ingeniously deal with this strike, he'd still suffered an extremely strong shock force, causing his internal organs to tremble, and it was extremely uncomfortable. In comparison, Kenyi was really much stronger. Previously, a single strike from Ling Han was able to defeat Nangong Xing, but now, he couldn't even take a single strike from Kenyi. Although Kenyi's cultivation level was higher, reaching the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier, it could also be seen that this young man's attainments in the path of the saber. That worked too. Guang Yuan and Lu Yutong's eyes widened. Even with their eyesight, they couldn't tell what method Ling Han used to deal with Kenyi's attack. What kind of spirit tool was that? It looked so awesome. Ling Han quickly recovered. He had the body of dead tree, and had the indestructible heaven scroll circulating within his body. Fortunately, he didn't use his fists, or else if you really took him as a disciple, you would definitely be beaten into a pig's head by Lian Guangzhu, Ling Han said with a laugh. Guang Yuan was shocked and said, "That brat is Lian Guangzhu's personal disciple?" As if he's not. Guang Yuan was startled at first, then he suddenly jumped up, and was about to strangle Ling Han's neck. "You're an extremely daring guy, you actually tricked Master Lian's personal disciple into becoming your lackey. If Master Lian found out about this, he would definitely cut you to death, and even I would be implicated by you." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Don't worry, when the time comes, I will definitely push all the blame onto Brother Guang. Who would believe that I, a first-layer poly, would have such ability? Guang Yuan only wanted to roar towards the sky. In the confrontation with Ling Han, it seemed that he had never gained the upper hand, and was instead led by the nose by the opponent. His expression was strange, and he said, "You really are a first-layer poly?" "As if I'm not." Ling Han smiled faintly. "Damn, if I believed your words, then I'd really be a pig." Guang Yuan spat. However, Zhu Hexian's talent was limited, and his limit in this lifetime was only that of a black-grade high-level alchemist. Even so, Zhu Hexian was extremely excited. In Rain Country, this was a big boss of alchemy. Qi Zhantai was completely a bystander. One moment, she said that she wanted to follow Ling Han to learn alchemy, and the next moment, she said that she wanted to return to the Yuan city to visit her relatives. In any case, she was following him around like a piece of sticky candy. However, Ling Han decided that when they reached the Yuan city, he would definitely get rid of her. After all, they were not familiar with each other. 5 days later, they returned to the Yuan city. They first left Qi Zhantai in the care of the De Yuan king, who had returned early, and then they went to Grey Cloud Town. The Ling clan had long since been rebuilt, and was now the only great clan in Grey Cloud Town. However, Ling Dongxing was not overbearing in the way he did things. Although he controlled the businesses of the whole Grey Cloud Town, the Ling clan would still leave some soup for the other smaller clans. Thus, the relationship between the Ling clan and the other clans was still quite good. When Ling Han returned, Ling Dongxing was naturally overjoyed. Moreover, the De Yuan king had returned early, and had already brought back the news that Ling Han had become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, not only was the Ling clan happy, the whole Grey Cloud Town was also in an uproar, and they all came to congratulate him. That was a black-grade high-level alchemist. In the past, there had only been 2 in the whole of Rain Country, and in De Yuan City, they were even more awesome among awesome. Even the De Yuan king would have to pay his respects and address him as Grandmaster when he saw him. Good, good, good. Ling Dongxing was so excited that tears were flowing out of his eyes. He had long since known that his son was not someone who would be stuck in a small pond, and that this trip to the imperial city would definitely allow him to soar to the skies. However, he had never imagined that his son would be able to soar so fiercely and soar so high. He only hugged Ling Han tightly, and continuously patted Ling Han's back, choking on his sobs, unable to say a single word. For so many years, he had always thought that his son was a piece of trash, causing him to feel extremely ashamed towards his wife. Now that his son had finally soared, he felt that even if he were to die now, he would still be able to face his wife in the future. Ling Han took out the food from the Black Tower. There was naturally no need to mention the vegetables and fruits, but he could also choose some cattle and sheep to slaughter. After handing them over to the chefs to be processed, the moment they were brought to the table, just the fresh aroma alone was enough to cause everyone's eyes to stare blankly, and they almost drooled. Nyos. Hunyo pouted very stingily, but she could not object to Ling Han, so she could only open her small mouth and eat with all her might. Her thinking was very simple. If she could eat everything into her own stomach, then she would not be at a loss. The little girl made a clean sweep of the food on her table, and then ran to another table to slaughter, causing all the guests to disregard their pride and fight for food with all their might. Ping, ping, pang, pang. The courtyard was filled with the sounds of chopsticks colliding with plates and chewing. These things were really too delicious. No one opened their mouth to speak, afraid that if they missed a bite, it would all be gone. This was not a blind worry. Everyone looked as if they had been starving for 3 days and 3 nights. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they wanted nothing more than to strangle the necks of everyone at the same table and make them stop so that they could eat to their heart's content. It's over, it's over. Such delicious food, after eating it once, they would not be able to forget it. How would they live if they could not eat it in the future? Ling Han left behind a lot of food ingredients for the Ling clan. In any case, the space inside the Black Tower was ridiculously large, forming a world of its own. Not to mention the Ling clan, even if the entire population of Rain Country were to move in, with the vegetables and livestock grown inside the Black Tower, it would be enough to ensure that they would not starve to death. In just a few days' time, the Black Tower had already harvested quite a few batches of vegetables. New seeds were sown, and they were growing in patches. Moreover, in the Black Tower, Ling Han was a godlike existence. Harvesting and sowing, he only needed a thought to do it, and there was absolutely no need for him to do it himself. Ling Han still asked Ling Dongxing if he wanted to move into the Black Tower. This way, he could guarantee the absolute safety of the Ling clan. However, after careful consideration, Ling Dongxing still decided to stay in Grey Cloud Town. This was the root of the Ling clan, not to mention that not too long ago, the blood of many members of the Ling clan had been spilled here. Ling Dongxing was even more unwilling to leave, and vowed to build up the Ling clan to a better state. Ling Han naturally would not force him. He kept almost all of his silver notes, and then concocted a large amount of low-level alchemical pills. With these two things, it would be difficult for the Ling clan not to become stronger. The bank was run by the imperial family of Rain Country, and these silver notes would be nothing more than waste paper outside of Rain Country. Who would allow you to exchange them for real money? Thus, Ling Han only went to exchange them for some gold and silver to bring along with him. Having a starting capital was enough. Moreover, the popular currency in the vast lands was not gold and silver, but origin power crystals. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 212. Ling Han saw a fragment of that great battle in the shards of blood-sucking origin gold, and he was sure that the giant of origin gold was definitely defeated. In his previous thoughts, the giant should have been dismembered, with shards everywhere. But there was another possibility, such as that giant of origin gold was only partially shattered, and the majority of its body was still intact. If so, then it wouldn't be strange that the giant of origin gold was suppressed in the mystery realm, and parts of its body appeared in Rain Country. Of course, this possibility was very small, pitifully small. But thinking of the scariness of the giant of origin gold, Ling Han still decided to go to the Devil Sky mystery realm. If the giant of origin gold was really suppressed below, then he had to ensure that the seal was strengthening, and not being undone. So many years have already passed, so even a monster like the origin gold giant should have already died, right? Ling Han comforted himself like this. However, for an existence like the origin gold giant, even if it had truly died of old age, its indestructible body could still give birth to a second life. It was just that it would be a completely different person. No matter what, he definitely had to go to the Devil Sky mystery realm. How do we enter the Devil Sky mystery realm? He asked. Very simple. After the mystery realm opens, teleportation doors will appear in various places, and after passing through, we'll directly enter the mystery realm, Lu Yutong said. Lu Yutong said. She paused for a moment, then continued, the reason why we know that the secret realm has opened is because this door has already appeared. Rain Country discovered 3 doors this time, and the one closest to us is 300 miles east of the Imperial City, Li Sichan said. Ling Han nodded, and asked, in the Devil Sky mystery realm, aside from the blood zombies, what other dangers are there? The humans inside are all dead, but there are still some demonic beasts, and they seem to be trapped inside, unable to be brought out. And we can't stay inside for long either. We'll be rejected, and after a certain amount of time, we'll be automatically expelled from the mystery realm, Lu Yutong answered. It is said that there is a terrifying existence in the depths of the Arcana. That is a forbidden area. We are just wandering around the periphery. After such a long time, the Arcana has finally reappeared. There must be a large number of spirit herbs that have matured. That is our main target, Li Sichan said. Lu Yutong also nodded her head in agreement. Cultivation methods and martial techniques had been plundered by the generations, and it was almost impossible for them to be left behind. However, it was different for spiritual grasses. This time, they had harvested a batch, and the next harvest would be at least a few decades later. Especially this time, it had only reopened after 300 years. There would definitely be a lot of spiritual herbs waiting to be harvested. What about the entry restrictions? Ling Han continued to ask. In short, the lower the cultivation level, the easier it is to pass. However, it is not certain every time. Sometimes, spiritual pedestal tier martial artists can enter, and sometimes, even gushing spring tier martial artists cannot pass, Lu Yutong said, shaking her head. Ling Han thought about it and felt that it was fine. Firstly, he had not offended any powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier. Secondly, if spiritual ocean tier martial artists could also enter, then he had Guang Yuan by his side. Thirdly, if only those below gushing spring tier could enter, then he was completely unafraid. Even if he encountered elites like Qin Yi and the eldest imperial prince, he would at least have the ability to protect his life. And before everyone entered, they would be branded with a mark and given a map. The mark represented the people of Rain Country, and the map was very simple, only marking the location of the central hall. The 9 nations of the desolate north could all enter the mystery realm through various teleportation doors, and it was not just the citizens of Rain Country. For example, Rain Country and Fire Country shared a border, and conflicts often broke out. After thousands of years, who knew how many people had died, and they were already mortal enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. This mark was used to distinguish enemies, and was directly branded on the back of one's hand. It could last for almost a month, which was more or less enough. And this time, the teleportation door's suppression was not particularly strong. Spiritual ocean tier warriors could also enter, but spiritual pedestal tier warriors could not. Ling Han. A voice that was gnashing his teeth was heard, filled with endless resentment. Ling Han turned his head, and couldn't help but have a strange expression. Feng Luo. Did this guy have the fate of a cockroach? He actually appeared again. Moreover, his 2 arms were indeed reattached, but they were obviously not nimble anymore, as if they were forcibly glued on, swinging on both sides of him, which was very strange. After all, it was already not bad to be able to reattach his arms, and if they were still nimble, it was practically illogical. This time, you don't have a hostage in your hands, so what do you have to stand against them? Kill him. Kill him. Feng Luo cried out involuntarily. As Ling Han drew nearer, he could not help but recall the few times he had clashed with Ling Han. He had been scared away, sent flying with a kick, and had his teeth knocked out. In the end, even his 2 arms had been chopped off. Seeing Ling Han's slender figure nearing, he instantly had a mental breakdown. Kill him. Kill him, he cried, tears and snot streaming down his face. This kind of disgraceful behavior caused the 4 guardian deities to look down on him, but who asked him to be Feng Yan's brother? They all stared at Ling Han with menacing eyes. This was a very good opportunity to strike. Today, the one who will die will only be you. Ling Han said. His figure moved, and he actually charged towards the 4 guardian deities. How dare you? The 4 guardian deities all rebuked him angrily. This brat had already fallen into their hands once, did he want to try again? Did he think they were idiots? Ling Han. Qi Yongyi and the others all exclaimed in shock. They had not thought that he would be so ferocious, going head to head with 4 powerful warriors of gushing spring tier just like that. Hong, 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 hong. 4 attacks shot out at the same time, blasting towards Ling Han. This time, the power of the 4 guardian deities had all increased by 1 star. The 4 of them working together could definitely kill any 9th layer poly tier in an instant, no matter how much of a genius he was. However, Ling Han was not at the peak of poly tier. Instead, he had transformed 9 into 1, and caught the one that had escaped. 10th layer poly tier Ling Han used the exiting cloud steps, and his figure was like a ghost as he miraculously broke through the combined attack of the 4 guardian deities. In a flash, he had already appeared in front of Feng Luo, and stretched out a hand to grab Feng Luo's neck. Save me! Feng Luo screamed. The 4 guardian deities were both shocked and furious. They could not imagine how Ling Han had managed to break through their combined attack, and a single thought rose in their minds: it was likely that history was about to repeat itself. Indeed, they were one step behind, and were completely unable to stop Ling Han. They could only watch helplessly as Feng Luo was taken down by Ling Han. Quickly release young Master Luo. The four guardian deities all shouted sternly, but they did not dare to attack again for fear of harming Ling Han. This scene was very familiar, causing their faces to burn as if they had been slapped in the face by someone. They had suffered a setback in the same ditch twice. Could it be that they were all pigs? Of course not. This was because Ling Han was now even stronger than before. Ling Han completely ignored the four guardian deities. He only stared at Feng Luo and said darkly, "You want to kill my entire family. Ling Han, you won't dare to kill me. If you have the guts, then cripple my arms. My brother will definitely save me anyway. Just you wait, as long as my brother returns, I will definitely kill your entire family." After his fear reached its peak, Feng Luo decided to throw caution to the wind. He stared back at Ling Han with a fierce gaze. "Come on, cripple me again if you have the guts. If you don't make a move, then you're a fucking grandson. Ling Han, I'm not afraid of you. You have no idea what kind of power my brother has mastered. It's rain. Pooh." With a crisp sound, Feng Luo's head suddenly disappeared. Ling Han had forcefully slammed it into his chest. After a while, fresh blood could be seen gushing out from his neck. All around, there was dead silence. Ling Han clapped his hands and said, "The world is quiet now. Young Master Luo." The four guardian deities shouted in unison, but without Ling Han's strength, Feng Luo's legs swayed a few times, and he instantly collapsed to the ground. His head had already been stuffed into his chest. How could he still be alive? Unless he really was a cockroach. Murder! Murder! Seeing this scene, someone shouted. However, although there was a large number of Imperial guards here to maintain order, there were even more people coming over. It was chaotic everywhere, and for a while, not a single Imperial guard came running over. "You killed young Master Luo. When Master returns, he will definitely tear you into pieces." The elephant guardian deity shouted harshly. "You speak as if my relationship with Feng Yen is very good." Ling Han shrugged, completely not taking this threat to heart. Chapter 214. What's going on here? A few Imperial guards finally arrived, and when they saw the headless corpse on the ground, their expressions changed. They were responsible for maintaining order here, and now that a person had died, it was hard for them to explain. "Sirs, this person has killed someone in public. Please arrest him." The four guardian deities pointed at Ling Han. When the Imperial guards saw Ling Han, their faces couldn't help but twitch. They naturally knew who Ling Han was. Their superiors had repeatedly ordered them not to get into conflict with this person. But this brat was too troublesome. How could he dare to kill someone in public? Ling Han scoffed, and said, "First, I have to correct one thing. This is not the Imperial City. It is very normal for us martial artists to have conflicts in the wild. Just now, I had some conflict with that idiot, but that idiot was too weak, and was finished in a single blow." Everyone was stunned. Indeed, this was not the Imperial City, but 700 miles away. However, the people around them were from the Imperial City, and there were Imperial guards controlling the scene, so they didn't know how to react. It was very normal for fights to occur in the wild. Every year, countless people in Rain Country died because of this, and if everyone was investigated, Rain Country would probably be finished, because every party would be involved in such fights. But the logic was right, so why did it feel so strange? "Don't cause any more trouble, or we'll arrest you, and if you dare to resist arrest, we'll kill you." One of the Imperial guards finally concluded. "Support." Ling Han raised his hand. He had already killed the person he wanted to kill, and now it was time for the four guardian deities to go crazy. He had no intention of making a move at all. The four guardian deities wanted to vomit blood. Wasn't this targeting them? "Let's go, enter the mystery realm, and wait for Lord to return," the wolf guardian deity said in a low voice. This time, when Lord returns, he will bring with him supreme authority. Even if the current Rain Emperor appears, he won't be able to protect this brat. The tiger guardian deity nodded. Enter the mystery realm, the elephant guardian deity said through gritted teeth. They didn't know if Feng Yen would take it out on them after they failed to protect Feng Luo again. Just thinking about it made them shiver. The four guardian deities entered the mystery realm and instantly disappeared. Only then did Qi Yongyi and the others heave a sigh of relief. They discovered that their foreheads were covered in cold sweat and their bodies were cold. Brother Ling, you're too daring, Bailey Tingyun said with lingering fear in his heart. It's just a bug. So what if I trample it to death? Ling Han said indifferently. Of course, Feng Luo is nothing to be afraid of, but Feng Yan. Qi Yongyi had only just started the conversation. Right now, who did not know that Feng Yan was like the sun at high noon? In the academy, he could practically do whatever he wanted with a single hand. Just the thought of forming a death feud with Feng Yan was enough to frighten others. Hey, little Ye! Ling Han suddenly waved to the back. Qi Yongyi and the others all turned their heads, only to see a one-armed young man with a single saber. He was like a sovereign of the heavens and earth, exuding an unparalleled aura. Anyone who stood before him would seem incomparably small and insignificant. Can Knight but little Ye? Everyone's expressions were strange. Could it be that there was some ambiguous relationship between these two men that could not be revealed to others? Can Ye walked over, and did not express the slightest bit of objection or discomfort towards Ling Han's way of addressing him. In his heart, there was only the existence of the saber. So what if the world slandered and slandered him? With one slash of the saber, peace would be restored. Chapter 2:15. Ling Han obviously wouldn't take it to heart. A dignified black grade high-level alchemist came to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. How could he be afraid of anyone? You! Chen Kai Fu saw Ling Han with a glance, and instantly, old and new hatred rose in his heart. He wanted to point a finger at Ling Han, but his right arm had just been reattached, so how could he raise it? The pain made him frown, and he could only raise his left hand to point at Ling Han. Such nerve! I was just about to go find you, and you actually delivered yourself to my doorstep. Ling Han frowned, and said, "Move your hand away, I hate it when others point at me." Ha 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 ha, you're about to lose your life, why are you still worried about other things? Chen Kai Fu snorted and snapped his fingers. More than a dozen people from the Star Defense Force instantly surrounded Ling Han. Zhu Hexian was instantly furious, and took a step forward, saying, "What do you guys want to do?" Black grade low-level alchemist. Chen Kai Fu saw the silver badge on Zhu Hexian's chest, and revealed a look of realization. No wonder you dare to oppose me, so you have a black grade low-level alchemist backing you up. Hey, but do you guys know who I am? Ling Han lightly patted Zhu Hexian's shoulder, indicating to let him come, and said with a smile, "I really don't know who you are." "Humph, you broke one of my arms. So what if you're a black grade low-level alchemist? I'm definitely going to kill you." Chen Kai Fu said sternly. He'd never suffered such great humiliation. Not only was his life threatened, he even lost an arm. Fortunately, he had countless high-level medicinal pills, which reattached his severed arm. Otherwise, he'd definitely hate Ling Han to the point of exterminating his entire clan. "Kill these two, kill them both." He pointed at Ling Han and Zhu Hexian, and when he saw Hu Niu on Ling Han's back, he immediately said, "And this damn girl, young Master Fu." The people of the Star Defense Force were somewhat hesitant. After all, there was a black grade low-level alchemist, so they didn't dare to act rashly. "Humph, my brother is a black grade high-level alchemist, what's there to be afraid of?" Chen Kai Fu said with his head held high. Ling Han and Zhu Hexian came to a sudden realization. No wonder this guy dared to be so arrogant, so he had a black grade high-level alchemist as his brother. In the 9 nations of the desolate north, a black grade high-level alchemist could be called a big shot, and was indeed awesome. However, the awesome one was only his brother, not him. Judging from his age, his brother should be around 30 years old, so he does have some talent, Ling Han said to Zhu Hexian. Although alchemy was the same as martial arts, and the higher one's cultivation level was, the faster one's progress would be, a black-grade high-level alchemist in his 30s was still very shocking. Zhu Hexian thought for a moment, then said, could the one with the surname Qing be Qing Fei Jun? He is indeed a genius in alchemy. From what I know, he became a black-grade low-level alchemist 7 years ago, and was only 23 years old at that time. 2 years ago, he advanced a step further and became a black-grade middle-level alchemist. Although it was publicly acknowledged that he would definitely become a black-grade high-level alchemist, it has only been 2 years since he advanced, which is really unexpected. A 30-year-old black-grade high-level alchemist, too shocking, he sighed, then glanced at Ling Han, and could not help but laugh. In comparison, this guy was even more freakish. Ling Han immediately had a guess, and said, it should be that Qing Fei Jun's luck is nature-defying, and he fused with a strange fire. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to become a black-grade middle-level alchemist in 5 years, and then leap to high-level in 2 years. Young Master Han is right. Zhu Hexian nodded in agreement. We. Qin Kai Fu stomped his feet in anger. These two actually minded their own business and talked, completely disregarding him, too infuriating. Kill them, kill them. Seeing that the people of the Star Defense Force were ready to make a move, Ling Han smiled and said, I say, who the hell are you to command the Star Defense Force? Are you a black-grade low-level or a high-level alchemist? Old Zhu, you're a genuine black-grade low-level alchemist, these Star Defense Force should listen to you, right? Zhu Hexian said, I'm Zhu Hexian, I order you all to immediately retreat. He was still quite imposing, and under his furious gaze and berating, everyone in the Star Defense Force involuntarily took a few steps back. After all, the money for their meals was given by the alchemist, so they couldn't turn around and bite the owner, right? What's there to be proud of? My brother is Qing Fei Jun. When he sees my brother, he has to step aside and obediently call him master. Qin Kai Fu was not the slightest bit afraid, pointed with a finger, and said, kill them, I'll bear all the consequences. Under his stern urging, the people of the Star Defense Force once again took a step forward, ready to attack. Ling Han shook his head, and said, I originally wanted to give you a chance, but since you don't know how to cherish it, then I can only kill you. He sighed. Actually, he wanted to kill this young thug earlier, but he showed mercy because of the farmer's bitter pleas, because he didn't want them to be implicated. But now that Qin Kai Fu was seeking his own death, he wouldn't be lenient. Kill, kill, kill. Qin Kai Fu said sternly. The dozen or so people of the Star Defense Force finally attacked, attacking Ling Han and Zhu Hexian. However, Zhu Hexian still bore the title of a low-level black-grade alchemist after all, so the Star Defense Force vented most of their attacks on Ling Han. Hunyao didn't see her attack, so who would take a little girl to heart? But they were obviously wrong. Seeing that they actually dared to attack Ling Han, Hunyao's ferocity instantly erupted. Xiao, she pounced out, turning into a streak of light. Pa, 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 she waved her claws continuously, bringing forth streaks of blood. Screams rang out, and the Star Defense Force fell to the ground one by one, all heavily injured by Hunyao. Fortunately, the little girl's ferocity was still the same, but her murderous nature was greatly reduced. She only dealt heavy blows, but didn't kill, so all the members of the Star Defense Force were still alive. What? Qin Kai Fu's face was full of shock and disbelief. He knew that Hunyao was a bit strong, but to the extent that she could fight 1 against 10 was still greatly beyond his expectations. He hurriedly broke into a run. Behind him was the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, and there were many experts keeping watch inside. Chapter 216. The Fire-Eyed Bull was a third-rank demonic beast. Its level wasn't considered high, but its eyeball was a treasure that could resist the cold. Therefore, it was extremely sought after by adventurers, and it could display miraculous effects when exploring cold places. Precisely because of this, the number of fire-eyed bulls was pitifully low, causing the fire-eyed bull's eyeball to be sold at a sky-high price. These people discovered the existence of the fire-eyed bulls here, so it was inevitable that greed was aroused. However, the fire-eyed bulls lived in herds, and if they charged in a herd, only spiritual ocean-tier elites could stand against them. Obviously, there was no spiritual ocean-tier existence in this group, so they had to think of a way to lure one out and kill it after it separated from the herd. These thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. He smiled faintly, and said, "This place isn't owned by your family. I'm just walking, why would I take a detour?" "You!" That person was at a loss for words, but immediately glared at him and shouted, "If you don't get lost, I'll kill you." A mere first-layer poly dares to clamor. This person was only at the 7th-layer poly, but against a first-layer poly, he definitely had the power to suppress them. Ling Han sighed. He only had one origin nucleus left now, and it seemed like he was attracting a lot of hatred for him. He looked at the other, and said, "Are you sure you want to use force?" Rumble. Just at this moment, a black silhouette could be seen approaching at an incredible speed. Upon closer inspection, it was a black bull, but its eyes seemed to be burning with a ball of fire. In front of this bull was a martial artist. Obviously, it was as these people had planned, luring a fire-eyed bull out alone. And Ling Han's heart moved. The strange fire in his left hand was jumping, sending him a vague thought, as if Hunyo was saying she was hungry. The strange fire seemed to be very interested in the two flames on the fire-eyed bull's eyes, wanting to devour them. Ling Han nodded, and sent a thought, saying, "If there's a chance, I'll get it for you." He didn't take it all on himself because he didn't know how strong this group of people were. Up until now, he had only seen two of them. Seeing that Ling Han didn't move, the person on the tree didn't say anything else but stared nervously at the fire-eyed bull. "Attack!" A loud shout rang out. More than 10 people jumped down from the trees and rushed out from the bushes. They just happened to surround the bull. Ling Han's gaze swept over them, and he began counting in his mind, one in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tier, one in the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier, one in the 3rd layer of gushing spring tier, and the other 12 are all in the poly tier. There should be no problem. The problem was the fire-eyed bull. The fire-eyed bull was a rank 3 demonic beast, but it was hard to tell exactly what rank 3 it was. Because demonic beasts and humans had different cultivation systems, it was hard to tell. But for Ling Han, his perception far surpassed that of normal people, and even spiritual pedestal tier elites might not be stronger than him. This fire-eyed bull seems to be in the late stage of gushing spring tier. The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. The late stage of gushing spring tier against the early stage of gushing spring tier was an absolute suppression. To make up for such a gap, 3 gushing spring tier martial artists were definitely not enough. Moreover, demonic beasts had thick hides and flesh, and martial artists of the same tier would find it hard to kill them, not to mention when there was a gap in tier. Unless, these martial artists had some secret treasure on them that could turn the tide of the battle. The martial artist on the tree naturally jumped down and joined in the siege. The fire-eyed bull was obviously a brute force type, and dodging was definitely not its forte. Thus, when faced with this rod, it had no intention of dodging at all, and raised its 2 metal horns to receive the attack. Bang! The metal rod smashed against the bull's horns, causing a series of sparks to explode. The fire-eyed bull's front hooves were actually forcefully smashed into the ground, all the way to its body. The metal rod also bounced upwards, causing the web between senior brother Ma's thumb and forefinger to split open, and fresh blood instantly spurted out. Ling Han saw this, and couldn't help but shake his head, thinking to himself that these two idiots had actually used their strength in the most idiotic way possible. But idiots against idiots, that was also good. In a head-on clash like this, victory and defeat would be determined very quickly. The fire-eyed bull's hooves exerted force, and it immediately leapt out. But after this head-on clash, it became even more wary, and didn't dare to launch another attack. Instead, it stared cautiously at Senior Brother Ma. In the demonic beast's ideology, survival was the most important. Attack together with me, and exterminate this beast. Senior Brother Ma said sternly. He needed the others to create an opportunity for him to attack. Chapter 2:17. No one wanted to make a move, because Senior Brother Ma had already used up a strength talisman. This thing was very valuable, and would not be much less than the value of a fire-eyed bull, so even if they took down the fire-eyed bull, the big head would definitely be taken by Senior Brother Ma. How much could the others get? Who would risk their lives for a mere few hundred taels of silver? However, they had no choice but to do it. Senior Brother Ma was glaring at them fiercely. Whoever didn't do it would be killed by Senior Brother Ma first. There was no law here. Everyone had no choice but to brace themselves and charge forward. However, each and every one of them was even more careful. They didn't dare to be hit by the bull's charge or get hit by the fireball. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they would lose half their lives. Although they were weak, they could at least divert some of the fire-eyed bull's attention. Senior Brother Ma took advantage of this opportunity to attack. Pang, 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 the great battle began once again. Right now, Senior Brother Ma was strong enough to fight against the fire-eyed bull. In addition, he had nearly 10 helpers, so he naturally had the upper hand. After being hit on the waist and back by Senior Brother Ma, the fire-eyed bull revealed a look of fear. It wanted to run away. However, Senior Brother Ma and the others had paid such a huge price, so how could they allow this prey to escape? Naturally, they did their best to stop it, and not long after, the fire-eyed bull was riddled with wounds. The demonic beast knew that it was impossible to escape, so it revealed a vicious expression and gave off a determined aura. It was going all out. The fire-eyed bull has an innate secret technique, 10 directions incineration. It explodes the source of fire power in its body at once, and its lethality is extremely terrifying. However, this will also cause the source of the fire-eyed bull's firepower to collapse, and it might never be able to recover, Ling Han muttered. N. Hunyo sat with a serious expression, continuously nodding her little head as if she understood. However, it was clear that Senior Brother Ma and the others did not know that the fire-eyed bull had such a powerful move. Everyone, let's work harder. This bull demon is almost at the end of its road. Although the bull's eye is the most valuable, if it gives birth to a calculus bovis, then the value will be even greater. Go all out. If anyone dares to slack off, I'll make them regret it later. Under the strict orders of Senior Brother Ma and the other two, everyone could only increase the intensity of their attacks and create more opportunities for Senior Brother Ma to attack. Boom! A wave of raging flames suddenly gushed out from the fire-eyed bull's body and shot out in all directions. It was as if tens of thousands of fireballs were fired at the same time. Apart from retreating, there was no way to dodge. However, the speed at which the flames spewed was too fast. Only Senior Brother Ma and the other two were able to escape the range of the flames in time. The others were all burned to ashes. Even so, there were many places on Senior Brother Ma and the other two's bodies that were scorched black and charred. They were in an extremely sorry state. When this big move was unleashed, the fire-eyed bull immediately did not even have the strength to stand, and fell to the ground with a bang. Damn it! Damn it! Senior Brother Ma cursed as he cried out in pain. I'll have to waste a lot of medicinal pills to heal my injuries again. This time, I really won't be able to earn anything. In any case, I managed to take down this bull demon. Another person said with a smile. He walked up and stabbed his sword into the fire-eyed bull's head. The four limbs of the bull demon instantly spasmed, but it soon stopped, ending its life. However, I still have to deal with one more person. Senior Brother Ma carried his rod and walked towards the big tree where Ling Han was. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he said, "Brat, you think I didn't notice a rat like you?" Ling Han smiled. When he walked over, he did not hide his tracks, and even spoke with someone for a while, so the people in the surroundings would naturally notice him. What was there to be proud of? So many people have died, and you still think you can escape? Senior Brother Ma sneered, and swung his rod to strike. Pang, the metal rod smashed onto the tree, and the big tree was instantly broken. The huge tree collapsed, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Ling Han leaped up and landed on the ground not far away with Hun Yo in his arms. His eyes carried a hint of coldness, and he said, "There's no enmity between us, and yet you want to kill me? Who asked us to be injured? If you ambush us while we're healing, wouldn't we be in a very passive position? So, please die now." Senior Brother Ma said coldly. Ling Han smiled, and said, "What makes you guys so confident that you've definitely got me?" Ha ha ha. Senior Brother Ma and the other two laughed loudly. A mere first-layer poly, you want to cause trouble? As expected, his current state was really attracting too much hatred. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I really don't want to show off, but I've decided to eat you 3 pigs. Impudence." A person shot out, and the sword in his hand shone with a cold light, slicing towards Ling Han. He was in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, and was also heavily injured, but against a first-layer poly, it was definitely something that could be killed with a single strike, so there naturally wouldn't be any accidents. Therefore, Senior Martial Brother Ma and the other person were all smiling. Ling Han moved. Chang, his sword was unsheathed, and 6 flashes of sword chi shot out. What? 6 flashes of sword chi? Senior Brother Ma and the other person exclaimed at the same time, but they immediately calmed down. No harm, no harm. Although 6 flashes of sword chi was shocking, Ling Han's tier was really too low. Even 10 flashes of sword chi couldn't make up for a whole 9 tiers difference. Poo, piu, 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 the cold light was like a wash, and the flesh on the first layer of the gushing spring tier was sliced off piece by piece. When Ling Han's sword chi completely surged through, the person became a bloody mess. Fuck me. Senior Brother Ma and the other person opened their mouths wide, and their eyes were even bigger than copper bells. This scene completely shattered their worldview. A first-layer gushing spring tier was actually instantly killed by a first-layer poly. Who would believe this? Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe it. You're definitely not in the first-layer poly. Senior Brother Ma said through gritted teeth. Then what's my cultivation? Ling Han asked with a smile. Senior Brother Ma couldn't say. That aura was definitely that of the first-layer poly, but if he compared it carefully, it was indeed stronger than a normal first-layer poly, but even if it was 10 times stronger, it was only equivalent to the middle stage of poly. How could it have the power to instantly kill a first-layer gushing spring tier? No matter what your cultivation is, you can only die. Senior Brother Ma shouted. His strength talisman was still in effect, and he had the power of the late stage of gushing spring tier, which made him extremely confident. Hong! He waved his metal rod and attacked. Because his speed was too fast and his power was too heavy, wherever the metal rod passed, a whirlpool formed in the air. Ling Han smiled faintly and moved his feet. His figure instantly moved like a ghost. If Senior Brother Ma was truly in the late stage of gushing spring tier, then Ling Han would definitely break into a run at the first instant. However, Senior Brother Ma only used the strength talisman to increase his power, and his speed didn't change at all. Moreover, Senior Brother Ma was heavily injured by the Fire-Eyed Bull's last attack, and his power was greatly reduced. His power didn't decrease much with the help of the strength talisman, but his speed was far from his peak state. How could he hit Ling Han like this? Chapter 218. Senior Brother Ma shouted in anger. His opponent was still holding a child, but he couldn't do anything to him, which made him extremely depressed. As time passed, he became even more anxious. Firstly, the strength talisman could only last for about 10 minutes. Secondly, he was indeed injured, and very seriously, so he had to be treated immediately. Otherwise, the longer he delayed, the more serious his injuries would become. Junior brother Yang, join forces with me and quickly take down this brat, he called out. Okay. The other person raised his sword and joined the battle. Two gushing spring tier elites actually joined forces to attack a poly tier cultivator. This would be despised to death. However, these two were obviously very thick-skinned and didn't care at all, only wanting to kill Ling Han as soon as possible. However, they discovered in shock that it was impossible to do so. Ling Han's figure was as slippery as a fish, making it impossible for them to catch him. They could only chase after him in vain, wasting their energy. And the longer they delayed, the more disadvantageous the situation was for them. Brat, what kind of hero are you if you keep dodging? Fight me head-on if you have the guts. Senior brother Ma goaded. Are you an idiot? Ling Han humphed. You already said that you can kill me with one move, and I still want to fight you head-on? Do you think I'm stupid, or are you the stupid one? Damn it! Senior brother Ma shouted in anger. However, I don't have the time to exhaust you, so come receive my sword. Ling Han's expression became serious, and the sword intent of the mysterious 3000 circulated in his heart as he began to prepare this move. Instantly, an oppressive feeling enveloped Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Yang. What sword technique is this? Senior Brother Ma immediately looked shocked. In his eyes, it was as if Ling Han had become the center of the universe, and everything else paled in comparison. Why can't I even move my body? Junior Brother Yang was about to cry. The other's sword was about to strike, but he couldn't even move his body, so wasn't he just waiting for death? Ling Han smiled internally. He used his divine sense to lock the two of them, and thus created the illusion that they couldn't move. This was an influence on their consciousness. Generally speaking, as long as one's willpower was strong enough, they would naturally not be affected. For example, with Kenya's concentration towards the path of the saber, even if Ling Han was still in the heaven tier, it would still be impossible to shake his determination. However, due to their heavy injuries, the willpower of these two people had already become extremely weak. Moreover, they were shocked by Ling Han's 6 flashes of sword chi and were shocked by the strange power of the first layer of element gathering tier, so their willpower was naturally greatly affected. Thus, Ling Han used the influence of the sword force of the 3 styles of black origin to create the illusion that they could not even move. Mysterious 3000 Ling Han unsheathed his sword. Shio, 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 shio. Dozens of sword lights shot out at the same time, condensing into poly chi to form sharp swords, shooting towards Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Lu. Under the pressure of life and death, Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Lu both broke free from Ling Han's mental pressure. At this time, it was already too late to escape, so they both brandished the weapons in their hands, doing their best to block the attacks. Peng, 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 peng. Every origin power sword was equivalent to Ling Han's full power attack, which was equivalent to more than 20 Ling Han attacking one of them at the same time. Who could withstand this? A few origin power swords were sent flying and shattered by them, but even more origin power swords pierced their bodies and tore their bodies apart. The destructive power was incomparably terrifying. Ling Han's figure flew over, his long sword making a circle. Pu, Piu, 2 heads were instantly sent soaring into the sky, and fell to the ground with a pa, revealing the faces of Senior Brother Ma and Senior Brother Mu, who were both unwilling and terrified. Ling Han panted, and said, "No wonder that guy, Sword Emperor, is so awesome. I only grasped 1% of this style's power, and could instantly kill 2 gushing spring tier elites." He looked pensive and thought, if the Heaven Sword sect is still around and knows that I learned the 3 styles of black origin, they probably won't let me go. A sect that could cultivate such a monster like Sword Emperor, would there be a Shattering Void tier elite overseeing it? I'd always thought that there was no Shattering Void tier existence in the vast lands, but now that I think about it, there might be such an elite that lives in seclusion. It's best to use the 3 styles of black origin less in the future, unless it's a matter of life and death, or it can be guaranteed that it won't be leaked. Meet. Just as he was thinking, Hunyo had already jumped out, and came to the fire-eyed bull's side, jumping non-stop. Although Ling Han bought a lot of beast meat, most of it was level 1, and there were very few level 2, not to mention level 3, so the little girl was drooling. "You glutton," Ling Han said with a smile. "Nyo is a glutton." Hu Nyo took this as a compliment, and nodded vigorously. Ling Han laughed loudly, and began to deal with this fire-eyed bull. The strange fire kept sending out Yaya thoughts in his left hand, already impatient to refine and swallow those 2 eyeballs. He lit a fire, cut off a leg of the bull, and roasted it on the rack. On the other side, he dug out the bull's eyes, and held them in his left hand. The strange fire surged out, and wrapped around the 2 bulls' eyes. The 2 bulls' eyeballs were actually shrinking at a very fast speed, and in a short while, they turned into ashes. Meanwhile, the strange fire shrunk and returned to Ling Han's left hand, sending him the thought that it wasn't full yet. 2 gluttons. Ling Han ridiculed inwardly, while comforting the strange fire, promising to find food for it in the future. In a short while, the bull's leg also emitted an enticing aroma. Ling Han took out a dagger, cut off the beef piece by piece, and placed it on a plate. This was the advantage of having a spatial ring. These completely impractical things could be carried around, since they took up very little space anyway. Hu Nyo immediately began to eat happily. She was the representative of the gluttonous type. She hadn't even eaten a piece of meat, and her small hand was already reaching for the second piece. Her mouth was filled to the brim, and even chewing was difficult. For the current Ling Han, the entire body of a level 3 beast was practically a treasure. The tough hide could be made into armor, something that even sharp weapons wrapped in origin power would find difficult to pierce. And the beef, bones, and tendons were all great supplements that could strengthen the body, comparable to some treasures. Of course, the most precious were still the bull's eyes and horns, but the bull's eyes had already been eaten by the strange fire, leaving only a pair of horns, which could be made into weapons that possessed great destructive power. Upon closer inspection, there were patterns that looked like characters on the bull's horns, and it was these patterns that gave the fire-eyed bull such great destructive power. Otherwise, this pair of bull's horns would only be hard for show. Ling Han ate the meat as he tried to activate these patterns. This was very difficult, since everyone's martial art was different, not to mention that this was an entire race. However, Ling Han was no ordinary person. Very soon, a pattern lit up, and then a second, and a third. A red light enveloped the horn, as if the bull's horn was burning. Ling Han waved lightly, and a flame shot out from the bull's horn, leaving a 3-inch deep scorch mark on the ground. Chapter 219. What did it mean to shock everyone? This was it. When everyone looked at Ling Han again, their gazes were filled with fanaticism. Even the 3 big bosses of alchemy were no exception. They put the 7 turns break crisis pill back into the jade bottle, and returned it to Ling Han extremely respectfully, as if they were a god. This was definitely a future king of alchemy, worthy of all alchemists prostrating themselves in worship. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I'm an Earth-grade alchemist now, right?" "Yes, you must be." Yong Longzhang and the other big bosses all nodded repeatedly. Not only was he an Earth-grade alchemist, he could even immediately become a medium or high-level Earth-grade alchemist, awesome to the point of being muddle-headed. Ling Han looked at Cheng Fei Jun, whose face was already ghastly pale, and said with a smile, "Small Cheng, quickly pay your respects to this master." Cheng Fei Jun bit his lip so hard it was about to bleed. Now, even the 3 Earth-grade alchemists acknowledged Ling Han's identity. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, how could he act shamelessly? But Ling Han had just killed his younger brother, so how could he kneel before Ling Han? If he knelt down, his life would be over. "Humph, you haven't gotten the alchemist's certificate yet. Just because you say you're an Earth-grade alchemist." As expected, he still acted shamelessly. Yong Longzhang immediately revealed a displeased expression, and said, "Cheng Fei Jun, Master Ling just concocted the 7 turns break crisis pill. Didn't you see it with your own eyes? Moreover, the 3 of us can testify, yet you still doubt Master Ling's identity. What's the meaning of this?" Cheng Fei-jun clenched his teeth and said, anyways, unless he can take out the proof of an Earth-grade alchemist, I definitely won't believe it. The Star Brilliance Palace Hall here didn't have the right to issue the proof of an Earth-grade alchemist. It had to be reported to the North Region's Alchemist Society headquarters first, and only after a series of steps could the proof of an alchemist be issued. Going through these procedures would take at least a month's time. Cheng Fei-jun took advantage of this, refusing to admit defeat no matter what. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, you won't shed a tear until you see your coffin? Daring to act shamelessly and barge into his territory, wasn't this courting death? He strode towards Cheng Fei-jun. What, you still want to fight me? Cheng Fei-jun sneered. His alchemy ability was indeed inferior to Ling Han's, but in terms of battle prowess, he wasn't the slightest bit afraid. He was in the 7th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Ling Han reached out and grabbed towards Cheng Fei-jun, impudent. Cheng Fei-jun snorted and raised his hand to counterattack. Paw! How could a mere 7th layer of the Gushing Spring tier be Ling Han's match? He'd just raised his hand when it was suppressed by Ling Han. He couldn't help but widen his eyes, revealing an expression of disbelief. Acting shamelessly in front of me, where do you get your confidence from? Ling Han greeted him with a series of punches, causing Cheng Fei-jun to scream repeatedly. Everyone looked at each other, and no one dared to mediate. Ling Han was an Earth-grade alchemist, and it was very possible that he would surpass Long Yong Chang and the others, becoming an Earth-grade mid-level or even high-level alchemist. Who would be willing to offend him? Moreover, it was indeed Cheng Fei-jun's gambling behavior that was bad. He obviously lost completely, yet still stubbornly resisted, completely asking for a beating. After beating Cheng Fei-jun like a dead dog, Ling Han picked him up, smiled at everyone, and said, I still have a score to settle with him. I'll be right back. Everyone thought that Ling Han was going to beat Cheng Fei-jun to his heart's content, and nodded hurriedly. Daring to go against a great alchemist, he deserved it. Ling Han carried the unconscious Cheng Fei-jun to an alchemy room. The walls here weren't transparent, and his figure immediately flashed, bringing Cheng Fei-jun into the Black Tower. In this space, he was a godlike existence, and stripping Cheng Fei-jun's strange fire was an easy task. As expected, a ball of azure flame immediately emerged from Cheng Fei-jun's body, and the strange fire in Ling Han's body immediately revealed excitement, sending a thought of Yaya to Ling Han, wanting to devour this ball of azure flame. Ling Han waved his hand, and the crimson strange fire instantly appeared, pouncing towards the azure flame without hesitation. The two balls of flames instantly started fighting. This was a battle between strange fires, and whoever won could devour the other, allowing their own body to grow, but the opponent would disappear forever. Ling Han couldn't intervene in such a battle, even if he was the master here. However, Ling Han's strange fire was nurtured from the body of a shattering void tier elite, and its grade was extremely high. Moreover, it was strengthened by the Black Tower, and its strength increased greatly, quickly gaining the upper hand. The two balls of strange fire began to fuse, and it was visible to the naked eye that the azure flame was disappearing, while the crimson flame became brighter and brighter. Ling Han made up his mind, and brought Cheng Fei-jun out of the Black Tower, casually tossing him to the side. If it weren't for the strange fire, he wouldn't stoop to the level of such a minor character. This time, he just happened to be going to be certified as an Earth-grade alchemist, and conveniently obtained a strange fire, so it could be considered a bountiful harvest. When he arrived at the main hall, Yong Longzhang and the others were already waiting there, all expressing their congratulations to Ling Han. Ling Han thanked them one by one, and then brought Hunyo back to the inn, agreeing to come back in a few days. He had to obtain the proof of an Earth-grade alchemist before he could leave, so he indeed had to stay here for a period of time. However, Yong Longzhang and the others promised to get Ling Han's proof of identity as soon as possible, and wouldn't make Ling Han wait for too long. Zhu Hexian told them about Ling Han's advancement to an Earth-grade alchemist, and instantly caused the people of Guanyuan Academy to be dumbfounded. Only a few days had passed, and Ling Han had advanced from a black-grade high-level alchemist to Earth-grade. How could anyone believe that? However, they immediately became excited again. Following an Earth-grade alchemist, would they still have to worry about not having enough medicine to eat in the future? Sigh, they were destined to become medicine containers, and let others be envious of them. They said that they wanted to celebrate with Ling Han, but in reality, they wanted to gorge themselves. After all, those fruits, vegetables, and meat that Ling Han brought were really too delicious, causing them to keep thinking about them. Actually, they had no idea that Ling Han owned a vegetable garden that could supply the entire Rain Country. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made such a request by chance. In their minds, these delicacies would definitely be incomparably rare. At night, in a secluded courtyard in the northern part of the small town, Chen Fei-jun was dressed in black, appearing like a thief. He knocked 3 long and 2 short knocks on the door, and with a creak, the door opened. A 14 or 15-year-old boy appeared, but expressionlessly stepped aside, not saying a single word. Chen Fei-jun's figure flashed, and he entered the courtyard. He walked quickly, and in a few steps, he arrived in the main hall. An old man with an unremarkable appearance was sitting and drinking tea. However, if one looked closely, his face was unusually pale. "Greetings, Lord Luo." Chen Fei-jun hurriedly knelt down and saluted. His arrogant attitude had long since disappeared without a trace. "Report every 10 days, why have you come early?" the old man surnamed Luo spoke, his voice hoarse, revealing a hint of gloom. At this time, the boy also walked into the main hall and stood behind the old man. Under the light, one could clearly see his appearance. His face was red and white, indescribably strange. It turned out that he had put on some powder and rouge. Why would a young man put on some powder and rouge? It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 220. Hearing the girl say so, Ling Han's impression of Gu Fenghua instantly improved considerably. Using tricks to force someone to bathe and taking the opportunity to steal was a very despicable thing to do. However, this girl was obviously not a decent person the moment she opened her mouth, which meant that Gu Fenghua still had a sense of propriety and didn't use such despicable methods on a decent girl. As the saying went, even thieves had their own principles. Although this was a bit far from it, it was still a kind of principle. A pervert with principles. Ling Han covered Nyo's ears and said, "Mrs. So Unrestrained, does your family know?" Giggle, giggle, giggle. The girl laughed so hard that her body shook. She winked at Ling Han and said, "Little big brother, could it be that you are interested in my master? Though my master is a bit older, she still has her charm. Young men like you are the most unable to hold back." Ling Han shivered, turned to Gu Fenghua, and said, "Pervert, you solve your own problem." After saying so, he carried Nyo and walked towards the lake. Now that the place was empty, Nyo could naturally bathe. Yeah. Nyo jumped down from Ling Han's body, took off all her clothes in a few moves, and jumped into the lake with a splash, playing to her heart's content. "Ling Han, accompany Nyo," she said coquettishly to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled and waved his hand. He didn't want to undress in front of others, especially when the girl was shockingly unrestrained. Pang, pang, pang. The sounds of fighting soon came from the dense forest. In a short while, Gu Fenghua walked over with a swollen face, no different from a pig's head. However, the girl was nowhere to be seen. Ling Han was puzzled and said, "That girl is only in the 9th layer of poly, how did pervert bro end up in such a sorry state?" Gu Fenghua cast a disdainful look at Ling Han and said, "A good man doesn't fight with a girl." A muscle twitched in the corner of Ling Han's mouth. That was why he had been beaten up so severely. However, that girl should have known that Gu Fenghua's abilities were far above hers, so she had fled after giving him a good beating to avoid arousing Gu Fenghua's killing intent. In a mystic realm like this, the use of a background was greatly reduced. As long as the deed was done cleanly, who would know who did it? Ha 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 ha, how did your cultivation drop to the 1st layer of poly? Gu Fenghua suddenly laughed loudly, then scratched his head. Other people become more powerful the more they cultivate, but the more you cultivate, the more you regress. And, as expected, you also have the potential to be a little abnormal. Ling Han could not help but shake his head. If he had not broken through to gushing spring tear, his current state would have attracted a lot of hatred. That's strange. Although your cultivation is low, why is it that you're giving me an even more oppressive feeling? Gu Fenghua asked with a face full of confusion. He scratched his head, appearing to be very troubled. You really are a pervert. In the end, he attributed the reason to being a pervert. In any case, as long as one was a pervert, no matter how strange one was, it could be explained with this word. Ling Han did not want to dwell on this matter, and said, "Didn't you return to the mountain to cultivate? Why did you come here again?" "On my way back, I met a heaven celestial, and tried to strike up a conversation with her. In the end, I ended up here for some inexplicable reason, and was also separated from that heaven celestial." Gu Fenghua was suddenly startled, and said, "I'm not going to talk nonsense with you anymore. I'm going to find my dream lover." Xiao, he broke into a run, and in an instant, disappeared without a trace. Ling Han shook his head, fetched some clean water from the lake, and washed his face. Hunyo had no interest in playing in the water by herself, so after washing herself clean, she ran ashore and coquettishly asked Ling Han to wipe her clean and help her put on her clothes. Only then did she smile sweetly. The two of them continued on their way, and saw a lot of killing on the way. The people of the 9 nations were gathered here. Perhaps it was not random when they were randomly teleported, meaning that the people of the same nation could appear in the same large area, but as they neared the ring-shaped mountain, because there were only 4 canyons that led to the inside of the mountain, the people of different nations began to encounter each other in large numbers. Ling Han's principle was that if you don't provoke me, I won't bother with you. As a former heaven-tier elite, he was very indifferent to the concept of his country. "Brother, help me." However, he didn't have the luxury of remaining on his own for long. In the wilderness ahead of him, a youth was currently rushing towards him, and behind him were 2 middle-aged men wielding blades and swords. Both of them had ferocious looks on their faces. With one look, it was obvious that this was a robbery. It was no wonder that this young man would be targeted. His clothes were luxurious, made of fine silk, and the various ornaments he wore were all luxurious. Firstly, he was the son of a wealthy clan, and should have been separated from the elders of his clan due to the random teleportation here. However, he only had a cultivation level of the 5th layer of poly. This was like a fool carrying gold and swaggering through the streets. It would be strange if he did not attract the covetous eyes of others. This young man was like a drowning man who had found a straw. He did not care that Ling Han was younger than him, and that there was even a little girl by his side. He turned around and ran towards Ling Han while shouting loudly. With his life on the line, his speed actually miraculously increased slightly. Very soon, he had arrived behind Ling Han. As he pointed at the 2 people who had already caught up to him, he said, "Brother, help me beat them back, and I will definitely reward you well." "Ha!" The 2 pursuers stopped. One of them wielded a saber, while the other wielded a sword. They both sized up Ling Han, and then laughed loudly. "I was wondering what kind of powerful fellow it was. So it's just a kid at the 1st layer of poly." "What?" the young man exclaimed. He had thought that since Ling Han dared to walk so casually in the wilderness with a little girl, he should have powerful strength. He did not think that he was only at the 1st layer of poly, which was much weaker than him. Ling Han could not help but sigh. After fusing with the 9 nuclei, his cultivation level dropped drastically. Not only did his friends worry for him, but he was also looked down upon when he was outside. How depressing. "Perfect, I'll kill the 2 of them together." The saber wielder revealed a fierce look. Shua, he had just spoken when he shot out, waving his long saber and slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han very casually raised his hand, and the other's wrist fell into his hand. The other was only at the 9th layer of poly. Even if they were at the same tier, Ling Han's 5-element origin nuclei could be many times stronger than him, not to mention that he had advanced to the 10th layer, and his strength was comparable to the first layer of gushing spring tier. Ha! The saber wielder struggled, but only felt that the hand that held him was like an iron hoop, and he could not struggle free at all. Fatty, what's wrong with you? What's so fun about playing with a little guy? Quickly kill him, the sword wielder urged. The saber wielder had already broken out in a cold sweat. In front of him, Ling Han's expression was calm, and there was even a hint of a smile on his face. But it was this smile that made him feel a chill that made his guts break. Ta, 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 ta. His teeth continuously chattered, and he said, "Old Zhang, quickly come and help me, this brat is strange." "What's strange about him? He's just trash at the first layer of poly," the sword wielder said disdainfully. "Fatty, this isn't funny at all. Quickly kill these two brats." Chapter 221. Ling Han casually lashed out with a slap, and with a paw, the fatty wielding the saber was sent flying. N. The sword-wielding old Zhang's expression tightened. Previously, he thought the fatty was just fooling around, but no matter how much he fooled around, he wouldn't go so far as to take a slap, which instantly made him wary. "This brat is strange," the saber-wielding fatty said as he stood up, rubbing his aching cheek. "What's strange?" the sword-wielding old Zhang asked. "He's extraordinarily strong. He held my wrist just now, and I couldn't break free at all." Though the saber-wielding fatty's face heated up, he still told the truth, or else it might cause both of them to die. Could it be that he was born with astonishing physical strength? The sword-wielding old Zhang speculated. "Should be, his presence is definitely only at the first layer of poly," the saber-wielding fatty said with absolute certainty. The two of them glared fiercely at Ling Han. "Brat, we originally had no grudge, but you insisted on standing out, you're seeking your own death." Ling Han sighed. He had not thought of helping them at all. Since they had entered this place to take the risk, then they had to be prepared to face danger. But who asked that young man to bump into them, and these two impatiently made a move. In the end, he was easy to bully at first, and now that he was rebuffed, they started to take him seriously. "Hunyo, I'll leave that skinny guy to you." Ling Han smiled. That was fine, he'd let Hunyo practice. The little girl could play around with that gushing spring tier cultivator of the Wu clan, what more this person in front of her who was only at the 9th layer of poly. "Okay." Hunyo immediately jumped out. Fighting and whatnot, that was her favorite thing other than eating, but Ling Han never allowed her to fight in the Imperial City. "What?" The sword-wielding old Zhang was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. He actually let a 5 or 6-year-old little girl deal with him. He couldn't help but look ferocious, wanting to cut this little girl in two with his sword and use her bloody corpse to tell Ling Han that this was the consequence of angering him. "Little brat, let's practice again." The fat blade-wielding man twirled his blade. "This time, I definitely won't underestimate you again." What he meant was that he had been caught earlier because he had been careless. Ling Han smiled and said, "Does your face still hurt?" "You!" The knife-wielding fatty was instantly angered and embarrassed. That slap had indeed left him with a burning sensation. "Since you know pain, why don't you remember the lesson?" Ling Han shook his head, then smiled. "In any case, from the moment you delivered the first strike, you were already a dead man. It doesn't matter whether you remember or not." "Bullshit!" The saber-wielding fatty shouted. He gripped his saber hilt with both hands and unleashed a powerful attack. "Great Devil Heaven Saber, cleave the heavens and shatter the earth. I am the Lord of Heaven and Earth, invincible." Puff before he could finish shouting his slogan, he was kicked in the stomach, and his whole body flew out like a cannonball. Pang, he landed heavily on the ground. His whole body shrunk into the shape of a prawn, and his face twitched violently. Ling Han withdrew his foot. He had used 20 to 30% of his power in this attack, but for a 9th layer poly cultivator, this kind of power was enough to cause a fatal wound. However, because this fatty was too fat, he relied on a large amount of fat to disperse the power, so his internal organs actually didn't explode. However, the skin all over his body cracked under the impact of such a huge power, and he instantly became a bloody man, looking extremely wretched. Although he managed to keep his life, the fatty could only groan and had no more battle power left. On the other side, Hunyo was having a great time. Her cultivation also advanced at a ridiculously fast speed, and now that she had reached the 7th layer of poly, she would have no fear even if she faced the old sword-wielding man head-on. However, she used her advantage in speed to continuously circle around the old sword-wielding man's back to launch sneak attacks, making old Zhang unable to even swing his sword once. Shwa, 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 Hunyo's hand was like a tiger's claws. After a few swings, fresh blood spurted madly from old Zhang's back. The fresh blood stimulated Hunyo's murderous nature even more. She half grinned, and her attacks became even more berserk. Behind Ling Han, the young man was dumbstruck. A youngster in the 1st layer of poly crippled an expert in the 9th layer of poly with a kick, and a little girl of only 5 or 6 years old made her opponent unable to fight back at all. What kind of monsters were these two? In a short while, Hunyo had knocked the sword-wielding old Zhang unconscious, and returned to Ling Han's side with a grin, turning back into the cute and pure appearance of a little princess. Pa, pa! Right at that moment, the young man used a rock to smash the heads of both Fatty and Old Man Zhang into mush. Even if the two of them were in the sky-human realm, they would still be dead for sure. Ling Han couldn't help but take a few more glances at him. This youngster was quite ruthless. Many thanks for Benefactor's righteous rescue. The young man hurriedly threw away the rock, his face full of humility, and said, "My name is Yang Ming, and I come from Stone Country. Benefactor, please don't blame me. I was actually chased by them all the way here, and almost lost my life. My heart is filled with hatred. 2 bandits, if they died, then so be it." Ling Han naturally wouldn't take it to heart. What surprised him was Yang Ming's expression when he attacked just now. There was no trace of emotion at all, appearing extremely cold-blooded. "Benefactor, can you let me accompany you? I was separated from my family when I came in, but I believe I can definitely meet them in the central hall ahead. At that time, my family's elders will definitely thank Benefactor heavily." Yang Ming looked earnestly at Ling Han. There was still an unknown amount of distance to the canyon ahead, and there were many dangers everywhere. Obviously, it would be safer to latch onto a powerful backer. Ling Han looked at the other with a faint smile. He wanted him to be a bodyguard with empty promises. This brat was quite good at bluffing. Yang Ming saw that Ling Han was unmoved, and clenched his teeth, saying, "Benefactor, do you know why those two wanted to kill me? Because you look like a fat sheep?" Ling Han said with a smile. "That's only half of it." Yang Ming shook his head and continued, "In the previous village, my luck was especially good. I found an ancient book, but then I ran into those two people and was chased by them. I hid that ancient book in a withered tree on the road. As long as Benefactor agrees to protect me along the way, I am willing to give that ancient book to Benefactor." Ancient book. Ling Han thought about it and said, "What is that ancient book about?" "I just roughly flipped through it. That ancient book should be the diary of the indigenous people here. It recorded some things about the inside of the ring-shaped mountain," Yang Ming said. He paused and said, "There is also a map inside." The last sentence moved Ling Han. He was very interested in the depths of the ring-shaped mountain and wanted to explore the secrets within. "Okay, let's go get the ancient book." Ling Han nodded. Yang Ming was overjoyed. Generally speaking, martial artists' love for books was either martial arts techniques or martial arts techniques. They naturally wouldn't take a second look at other things. He was just taking a gamble, and he didn't expect Ling Han to actually agree. Chapter 223. However, Ling Han had just returned to the inn when he ran into a group of old friends. Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tingyun, Li Dongyu, as well as the descendants of the 8 great clans of the imperial city, such as Zhao Huan, Qian Wuyong, Huang Weizhe, and so on. These people would basically be the mainstays of Rain Country for the next 30 years. They had all heard that Ling Han had become an Earth-grade alchemist and asked around. After finding out that Ling Han was staying here, they came to pay a visit. An Earth-grade alchemist was too awesome, setting a precedent in Rain Country. Even if the Rain Emperor came in person, he was only fit to be on equal footing with Ling Han. Even a slightly weaker emperor would have to flatter Ling Han. Since that was the case, how could these youngsters not come to pay a visit and greet Ling Han when they knew he was here? What's more, if they could form a relationship with such a super alchemist, that would really be a huge gain. Grandmaster Ling, Qi Yongyi and the others said with a smile, not daring to directly call Ling Han by his name. Ling Han didn't take it to heart. He naturally didn't need to treat his friends as outsiders, but Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tingyun, and the others didn't pass his test, so they could only be said to be casual acquaintances. No matter how they called him, Ling Han wouldn't mind. However, Ling Han wouldn't be stingy either. He took out the vegetables, fruits, and meat grown in the Black Tower to entertain them. There were still quite a few low-level demonic beasts inside, but if he wanted to entertain casual acquaintances, normal meat was enough. For a moment, everyone was fighting over plates, and the scene went out of control. The others in the inn thought they were going to fight, and almost ran to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall to call for help. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, as martial artists, everyone couldn't help but feel itchy. Qin Yi, you've actually reached the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Zhao Huan looked at Qin Yi with a bit of shock. Before this, he'd always firmly suppressed Qin Yi in terms of cultivation, but now he'd just broken through to the 7th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, yet Qin Yi had soared to the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. How could he not be shocked? Ah! Qian Wuyong and the others also cried out in surprise. The path of martial arts was difficult, and one step required one footprint. It was indeed possible to have a leap in cultivation at a lower tier, but the higher the cultivation, the slower the advancement. Just like climbing a tall mountain, one could sprint at the beginning, but halfway up the mountain, one would be out of breath, and have to rest after a few steps. Qin Ye's advancement speed completely exceeded their expectations. Qin Yi didn't say a word, and remained cold as he lightly rubbed the saber's hilt. In his eyes, there was no person closer to him than a saber. Everyone was only shocked for a while, and immediately came to a sudden realization. Don't forget, Qin Yi was now following an Earth-grade alchemist. With an Earth-grade alchemist using alchemical pills, how could cultivation not advance quickly? In reality, Qin Yi also had the qualifications to charge into the spiritual ocean tier, but he was the same as Ling Han. Because he advanced through alchemical pills, he had to first stabilize his tier. Blindly pursuing a higher tier was like pulling up seedlings to help them grow, and the repercussions would very quickly appear. If there was a situation where battle prowess couldn't keep up with one's tier, then what difference would there be from a cripple? Qin Yi, battle with me. Zhao Huan challenged. Previously, he had always been able to steadily suppress Qin Yi, but now that Qin Ye's tier had instead surpassed his, he wanted to battle even more to prove that he was the strongest genius of the imperial capital. Ling Han, Yan Tianzhao, and Feng Yan were freaks, so be it. Qin Yi did not accept the battle, but shook his head, and said, "You are no match for me, and will be killed by me with a single strike." Zhao Huan couldn't help but be angry, but because Ling Han was present, it wasn't good for him to flare up. He only snorted, and said, 2 days later, it will be the martial arts tea party. I hope you won't be stingy with your battle then. Qin Yi was silent for a moment, pointed at Ling Han, and said, I am not the person you want to surpass, he is. Everyone was instantly speechless. Who didn't know that Ling Han was a freak? He defeated Yan Tianzhao with a single strike, and crippled Feng Yan with a single palm strike. He was practically a monster. Moreover, this monster was also a big boss of alchemy, so who would dare challenge him? It wouldn't be good if they lost or won. Grandmaster Ling, are you also going to participate in the martial arts tea party the day after tomorrow? Qi Yongyi asked. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "There's no harm in going. If Grandmaster Ling participates, then we can only stand to the side," Qian Wuyong said with a smile, giving Ling Han a little flattery. "However, Grandmaster Ling, I beg of you, hurry up and increase your tier. We'll lose too much face if we keep being suppressed by you, a person in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier." Huang Wei-zhe also joked. This was also because Ling Han was young, or else if it was Fu Yuansheng, he definitely wouldn't dare to say such words. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. His spring's eye had already fused in advance, so whether it was the third layer of Gushing Spring tier or the ninth layer of Gushing Spring tier, he'd still be in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier if he went up. He said, "Don't worry, I won't make a move the day after tomorrow." With such a good opportunity, he planned to sell the ginseng and Ganoderma in the Black Tower to the people of the 9 nations of the desolate north. This way, he could weaken the financial resources of his opponents competing for the blue-scale demonic fruit, and also increase his own wealth, naturally killing 2 birds with 1 stone. "Grandmaster Ling, this is what you said." Everyone's eyes lit up. The strongest person in the 9 nations of the desolate north. Who wouldn't want to wear such a halo? But if Ling Han made a move, then others wouldn't have any hope at all, unless they could break through to the spiritual ocean tier. But how many spiritual ocean tier cultivators below 30 could there be? Only Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, these 2 freaks. Ling Han smiled, and said, "I said it, so don't worry, I only plan to sell some things." "What kind of alchemical pill does Grandmaster Ling plan to sell?" Everyone was curious. This young man had advanced to become an earth-grade alchemist, so the alchemical pill he would take out would definitely be shocking. "You'll know the day after tomorrow." Ling Han kept it a secret. Though everyone was curious, they dared not ask Ling Han any further. They could only feel an itch in their hearts, but it was only 2 days anyways, so they'd just bear with it. The answer would be revealed the day after tomorrow. They ate until late at night and only then did everyone leave. However, there were 2 people who stayed in this inn, so they could return to their own rooms with a few casual steps. 1 day, 2 days, time passed very quickly, and it was already the day of the martial arts tea party. The venue was set on the public square in the eastern part of the town. A huge pergola had been temporarily set up here, enough to seat several thousand people. And this time, though the younger generation of the 9 nations of the desolate north had all come, those who came were also the cream of the crop. No matter what, they would at least be in the level of element gathering tier. Thus, on average, each nation would be allocated a few hundred seats, and that was enough. The martial arts tea party would begin at noon and end at night. Ling Han, Lu Yutong, and the others arrived at the public square, and casually found a place to sit down. There were quite a few of them in their group, and they soon occupied a table. Hunyo could not sit still, and immediately took out the snacks that she had prepared long ago from her spatial ring, and began to eat very happily. Very soon, more and more people arrived, and even the star guards were mobilized to maintain order. After all, young people were hot-blooded, and it would not be good if someone died in a fight. "Thank you, friends, for coming. I am grateful." Cheng Fei-jun appeared and said in a loud and clear voice, instantly causing most of the people to stand up. This was a black-grade high-level alchemist, and he could be considered a big shot in any nation, so how could they be disrespectful? Chapter 224. Ling Han looked at the third-tier bronze-armored corpse and frowned slightly. A third-tier bronze-armored corpse, even if he couldn't defeat it, wouldn't be able to kill him. Most importantly, it was pulling 3 coffins, which meant that there was still a corpse soldier that hadn't appeared. Or a bronze-armored corpse, or a silver-armored corpse. Even a first-tier silver-armored corpse was equivalent to a spiritual ocean-tier elite. Ling Han was freakish, but not freakish enough to face a spiritual ocean-tier warrior head-on. Moreover, corpse soldiers had no feelings, didn't fear death, and didn't fear injury. Unless their heads exploded, they wouldn't lose battle prowess, making them very difficult to deal with. More importantly, corpse soldiers were all forged. During this process, the bodies of corpse soldiers would become incomparably tough, comparable to forging materials of the same grade. How could they be broken through like this? Thus, to completely kill a corpse soldier, one needed to surpass a tier and completely shatter it with overwhelming power. Ling Han's current power was only comparable to the first layer of the gushing spring tier, and he couldn't even deal with a third-tier bronze-armored corpse, let alone a silver-armored corpse. Moreover, even if he could kill Rong Huanxian instantly, the corpse soldier wouldn't die with the controller's death. Instead, it would break free of control and kill based on instinct. However, Rong Huanxian was at the fifth layer of the gushing spring tier, not easy to kill. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "In your third coffin, there won't be a silver-armored corpse lying, right?" Rong Huanxian's expression changed slightly, and he snorted, saying, "You really know a lot about the Thousand Corpse sect." Without another word, Ling Han broke into a run, grabbing Hunyou with his left hand and Yang Ming with his right. Shoo, they instantly became a small black dot. As expected, there was a silver-armored corpse. What was there to fight? Ah! Rong Huanxian was stunned, and then let out a sky-shaking roar. He didn't think that Ling Han would run so decisively. Trash! Trash! He roared angrily at the two corpse soldiers, but the corpse soldiers would only fight after he gave the order. Otherwise, if they had their own thoughts, he would probably be the first to be swatted to death and eaten. After a while, he calmed down and said to himself, "It's fine. That brat will definitely go to the central hall. I'll kill everyone there, and the three corpse soldiers should be able to advance. I heard that there are still blood zombies here, and their battle prowess is almost on par with flower blossom tier elites. If I can get my hands on 3 of them, hee. The blood zombie will only appear when the blood sacrifice is insufficient. If I kill everyone in the 4 central halls, the blood zombie will definitely appear." Ha. He laughed maniacally. Ling Han only stopped after running for close to 100 miles in one go. He casually threw Yang Ming to one side, and then put Hunyou down. Yang Ming had probably never been treated so rudely before. The veins on his neck immediately bulged, and he revealed a furious expression. However, when he thought of the difference in power between him and Ling Han, he immediately suppressed this kind of anger. "Young Master Han, the gorge is just ahead. Let's go quickly," he said impatiently. Ling Han nodded. The space in his dantian was extraordinarily large, and he had only expended less than 10% of his origin power to travel 100 miles in a single breath. Taking out a level 2 return origin pill, he would be able to recover very quickly. If others saw this, they'd definitely scold him for being a wastrel. Return origin pills were definitely taken in battle because you could usually meditate to recover, and there wouldn't be time to do so during battle. This canyon looked like a sliver of sky from afar, but if you really walked inside, you'd definitely be shocked at the scale of the canyon. It was a few hundred miles long, and the width was about 2 miles. It was straight as if it was cut by a sharp weapon. There wasn't any place that was wider or narrower. A few hundred miles was naturally a piece of cake for poly-tier warriors. After half a day, they walked out of this long canyon, and a majestic palace appeared in front of them. When they first saw this palace, everyone revealed a shocked expression, because this building was actually floating in the air, and there were rows of stairs that were also suspended in the air, which was a marvelous sight. So magical. Chapter 227. Brother Zhong, get rid of him. That's right, get rid of him. We, the 9 nations of the desolate north, are not to be trifled with. The crowd became enraged, and Cheng Fei Jun, on the other hand, was silent. He recognized the symbol on Bao Xian Rant's sleeves. This was a disciple of a great sect, so it was not worthwhile for him to offend him. Anyways, it was just Zhong Yiguang. If he died, then so be it. There were still plenty of geniuses here, so one less wouldn't matter. Ling Han frowned, and said, Zhong Yiguang is in trouble. Why? Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both asked in shock. Because that brat is in the spiritual ocean tier, and in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at that. Guang Yuan continued. What? Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both revealed shocked expressions at the same time. A spiritual ocean tier martial artist in his 20s. What a joke, it was impossible to find such a person in the Rain country. There indeed appeared recently, and Feng Yen was one of them. And Yen Tian Zhao was even younger, only 15 years old. But normally speaking, one would have to be over 30 to be able to step into the spiritual ocean tier. In fact, reaching the gushing spring tier at 30 years old was already quite good. Could it be that the people of the North region were all so powerful, that any random person that came out was a martial arts genius? Then this battle cannot be fought. Zhu Wujiu stood up abruptly. This was an absolutely unfair battle. Ling Han nodded, and said, you go and stop it, and have Can Yi return. Yes. Zhu Wujiu hurriedly received the order and left, but it was already too late. Zhong Yiguang was already unable to restrain his anger. With a wave of his whip, he lashed out at Bao Xi and ran. Shua, the long whip turned into a spirit snake, and as origin power surged, layers of ripples appeared in the air, which was extremely shocking. Yet Bao Xian Ren only smiled coldly, and pointed with the little finger of his left hand. With incredible accuracy, he pointed at the middle of the long whip, and an even stronger wave of origin power surged, and the long whip instantly softened as if it had been hit where it hurt. Zhong Yiguang was shocked, and was just about to wave his whip to regain his composure, but Bao Xian Ren had already flown out. His speed was extraordinarily fast, and with a single movement of his feet, he had already appeared in front of Zhong Yiguang, grinning. Zhong Yiguang was extremely panic-stricken, and was about to abandon his whip to attack when Bao Xian Ren flicked a finger at his forehead. With a paw, his whole body was instantly sent flying, and when he was flying in midair, his head suddenly exploded, and red and white matter scattered everywhere. Hiss! Everyone was trembling in fear. This was one of the strongest prodigies of the 9 nations of the desolate north, but now, he was killed like a stray dog. How could they accept this? Their hearts were cold, and they were trembling in fear. Could it be that the North region was filled with monsters like this? Then why the hell would they go to the Winter Moon sect? Entering the sect would definitely have to experience fierce competition, and they would all die from a casual attack. They had come out to pursue a higher tier of martial arts, and not to throw their lives away. All of a sudden, many people had the thought of retreating. Don't you guys think that when a person's head explodes, it's the most beautiful? Bao Xian Ran said with a hint of intoxication, then his voice became cold, and he said, you really surprise me. You stray dogs of the desolate north can actually be so beautiful when you die, it's really inconceivable. This was not praise. Everyone was furious, but when they thought of the others' terrifying strength, none of them dared to make any noise. You're not in the gushing spring tier. Chu Shuai said. Zhong Yiguang was in the 9th spring of the gushing spring tier, and no gushing spring tier martial artist would be able to kill him in 2 moves. Only spiritual ocean tier martial artists had such qualifications. Bao Xian Ran began clapping his hands, and said with a smile, finally, there's a smart person. I obviously can't be in the gushing spring tier. A genius like me is already 25 years old, so how could I still be trash in the gushing spring tier? Spiritual ocean tier, everyone exclaimed in shock, and at the same time, became incomparably furious. You, an elite of the spiritual ocean tier, came here to torture and kill a gushing spring tier martial artist? What did this mean? Bao Xian Ran stamped his foot, and a pattern opened up, forming a light green symbol. Releasing martial intent was the sign of the spiritual ocean tier. Sir, you've gone too far. As a dignified spiritual ocean tier martial artist, you actually hid your cultivation level and killed people at every turn. Don't you think you've gone too far? Bai Yu Quan said in a powerful voice. Well said, well said. Everyone cheered for him. Even a spiritual ocean tier martial artist couldn't bully others like this. What's more, it wasn't as if there were no spiritual ocean tier martial artists in the 9 nations of the desolate north. Bao Xian Ran picked his ear, and said, What do you mean by going too far? I'm about the same age as you guys, my cultivation level is higher, and I'm stronger than you guys. This is because my talent is higher, and you guys are just trash. As trash, you should have the awareness to be stepped on by me. Too despicable. Let's attack together. At most, a few dozen people will die, but we have to kill him no matter what. That's right, we, the 9 nations of the desolate north, are not to be trifled with. Bao Xian Ran's provocation finally caused everyone to successfully suppress their fear, leaving only endless fury. No matter what, they had to kill this arrogant guy to vent their anger. Oh, kill me. Bao Xian Ran sneered, raised his left hand high up, and circled around the crowd. He said, Trash, have you noticed this emblem? This is the Cold Water Sect's emblem, and I am precisely a disciple of the Cold Water Sect. Putting aside whether you guys can kill me or not, even if you can, not only will you guys die, the clans behind you will also die, and your country will also be destroyed. Because I am a disciple of the Cold Water Sect. Do you understand, you trash? Bao Xian Ran was proud, and put down his left hand. Now, is there any trash that is not convinced? All of a sudden, the crowd once again fell silent. A single spiritual ocean tier cultivator was obviously nothing much. United as one, they could still fight to the death no matter what. But for the Cold Water Sect to be able to be called a sect, they had at least a spiritual infant tier elite keeping watch, and that was an unimaginable power. Chapter 228. You guys go first. Ling Han said to Qi Yongyi and the others. What about you? Lu Yutong hurriedly asked. Ling Han smiled and said, I can't leave for now, but I'll catch up to you guys soon. Ha ha ha, you can't leave. Rong Huanxian's hoarse voice came from the bronze coffin. All of you will die and become food for my corpse soldiers. Ling Han pretended not to hear and said, I won't have any worries if you guys leave. Only then did Qi Yongyi and the others nod and leave. They did not know why, but they believed Ling Han's words without the slightest doubt. It was as if this youngster had an indescribable charisma that caused them to involuntarily do as he said. Previously, part of the reason why they had supported Ling Han so strongly was also because of this kind of charisma. Kill them, don't let a single one escape. Rong Huanxian shouted from the bronze coffin. The silver-armored corpse immediately abandoned Uncle Fu and stood guard at the exit, slaughtering those who wanted to escape. It had the battle prowess of the spiritual ocean tier, even reaching 9 stars. Although it couldn't use martial arts, it had a sharp weapon like corpse poison, so its destructive power wasn't reduced at all. It was even more effective against people of lower tiers, killing a large group with a single sweep. Stop it! A few spiritual ocean tier elites all shouted. The juniors here were all people of their country, and it also involved the issue of blood sacrifice. If they provoked the blood zombie, then it would really be a big problem. The 8 spiritual ocean tier warriors joined hands against the silver-armored corpse and said, Everyone, leave the main hall immediately. If you meet other people on the way, tell them to go to the other central halls. With these 8 people blocking the silver-armored corpse, the others finally got a chance and dashed out of the hall. Go! Ling Han said to Lu Yutong. If you don't go, I won't go either. Lu Yutong said, gritting her teeth. Humph, quite affectionate. Ao Yang Ming sneered. Uncle Fu, take them all down. Yes, young master. Uncle Fu hurriedly nodded and stared coldly at Ling Han, pressing forward step by step. Time to go. Hold me. Ling Han hugged Hunyo with one hand and called out to Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong's beautiful face flushed red, but she did not hesitate to hug Ling Han. She could smell the strong masculine scent emanating from Ling Han's body, and she could feel her heart thumping wildly, as if it was about to jump out of her throat. Go! Where else do you think you're going? Uncle Fu sneered. He had already blocked off the exit of the palace hall, so how could it be that Ling Han still wanted to force his way through? Ling Han sprinted, and in a few steps, he had already arrived at the edge of the main hall. This place had no walls on all sides, and he could jump out from any side. However, only the entrance had a flight of stairs, and as for the other 3 sides, sorry, that was a height of over 1,000 meters, and below them was a hard rock plaza. Jumping down from such a height would only result in death. This old servant understands. Uncle Fu sprinted to the edge of the hall and reached out with one hand, turning it into a giant hand of origin power, grabbing at Ling Han with incredible speed. This old servant understands. Uncle Fu scuttled to the edge of the hall and reached out with one hand, turning it into a giant hand of origin power, grabbing at Ling Han with incredible speed. A spiritual ocean tier warrior was a spiritual ocean tier warrior, after all. With a wave of his hand, he caught up to Ling Han. Seeing this, Lu Yutong gritted her teeth and revealed a determined expression. Ling Han saw this and hurriedly said, "Don't act recklessly." But Lu Yutong acted as if she had not heard anything, and pushed at Ling Han with both hands. Xiao, Ling Han's descent accelerated, while she charged towards that large hand. Ding, she unsheathed her long sword and slashed at the giant hand of origin power. However, the difference in power between them was really too great. That gigantic hand of origin power only needed to clench its fist, and Lu Yutong was instantly caught. Merely with this slight obstruction, Ling Han had already surpassed the limit that the gigantic hand of origin power could reach, and had no choice but to drag Lu Yutong back. Pa, Uncle Fu casually threw Lu Yutong to the ground and said to Ao Yangming, "This old servant is useless, please punish me, young master." "No matter, that guy is definitely going to die." Ao Yangming sneered. He only cared about Lu Yutong. So what if Ling Han was smashed to pieces? The ancient records wouldn't be broken anyway, so he could just pick up the corpse when the time came. However, an expression of astonishment immediately appeared on his face. That was because the rapidly falling Ling Han had actually opened up a large umbrella, and the speed of his descent immediately slowed down. He was like cotton wadding floating in the air, and was falling towards the forest in the distance. This time, even if Uncle Fu immediately ran out of the palace to chase, with this detour, Ling Han would have long fallen into the forest. That was a natural barrier. How could he find Ling Han? Damn it! He immediately roared, but when his gaze swept past Lu Yutong, the corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile. With this hostage in hand, he wasn't afraid that Ling Han would keep hiding and not come out. In the distance, Ling Han's gaze seemed to be able to penetrate space, staring at Ao Yangming's face. At this moment, he was filled with a strong killing intent. Ao Yangming couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, but he immediately thought that with his status, there was no need to be afraid of a brat like this, and instantly straightened his back. Ling Han mouthed a few words, and without another glance, his figure had already fallen into the forest. You don't care about your life for him, but he didn't even look at you," Ao Yangming said to Lu Yutong. At this time, he naturally had to sow discord. Lu Yutong was unmoved, and only sneered at Ao Yangming, saying, "He will come and save me." "Oh, why would he come and save you?" Ao Yangming sneered. "A mere poly-tier." Lu Yutong didn't say anything else, as if she was looking down on Ao Yangming. Ao Yangming was furious, and just as he was about to flip out, he heard Uncle Fu say, "Young master, it's dangerous here, let's leave first." Ao Yangming could only nod, and say, "Let's go." The group left the main hall, and could still hear the sounds of the 8 spiritual ocean tier warriors and the silver-armored corpses' fierce battle from afar. They couldn't help but look worried. Ling Han put away the blood-sucking origin gold, and walked forward with a gloomy expression. Chapter 229. Ling Han charged his cultivation with all his might, and Hunyao seemed to be stimulated as well. She didn't make a fuss and started cultivating as well. Both of them were freaks. In just 2 days, Ling Han reached the peak of polytier, and Hunyao reached the peak of the 7th layer of polytier, not far from Ling Han. Breakthrough. Ling Han took out a few medicinal pills and tossed them into his mouth. He didn't need to comprehend his cultivation level. As long as he had enough energy to support it, the door to gushing spring tier would open for him. Breakthrough. Hunyao said in a sweet voice, and started charging towards the 8th layer of polytier in a dignified manner. In Ling Han's body, there was an earth-shattering change happening. The increase of a small tier was only the difference of one more origin nucleus. Even if he reached the 10th layer of polytier and fused 9 large origin nuclei into one super origin nucleus, it was still a change of origin nucleus. But from polytier to gushing spring tier, it was a qualitative change, a completely new change. Turning the origin nucleus into a spring of origin power, spewing out origin power. With this step, a martial artist's power would increase tenfold. Power wasn't battle prowess, but it was the core component of battle prowess. Without the support of a powerful power, how could one form overwhelming battle prowess? Ling Han had enough comprehension of cultivation level, so breaking through to gushing spring tier should be a piece of cake. However, the truth was not so. That was because he only had one origin nucleus. His experience was based on the breakthrough of 9 origin nuclei in his last life, but now it became one, which was completely different. All his experience became useless. However, comprehension of cultivation level was still useful, but the method needed to be changed. The method was actually the same, liquefying the origin nucleus into a spring, but the difference was that if he broke through with 9 origin nuclei, he could use the other 8 nuclei as support. But now that he only had one, the source of power became a problem. He couldn't use his own power, so he could only crazily swallow medicinal pills. Ling Han waved his hands and continuously swallowed the medicinal pills. The medicinal power worked in his body, forming a tsunami-like power. One after another, a mysterious power surged into Ling Han's body. This was because his cultivation level had reached the required level, and his comprehension was also sufficient. The heaven and earth resonated, causing his origin nucleus to continuously soften, as if it was rippling water. The power of heaven and earth was used, and now it was up to him. Melt for me. Ling Han waved the 5 elements chaos lotus and absorbed the surrounding spiritual qi. Added with the power of the alchemical pill, it continuously bombarded the origin nucleus, attempting to liquefy it and turn it into the mouth of the spring, the source of power. This step was very difficult, because unlike normal element gathering tier martial artists who had the help of the other 8 cores, it was much easier in comparison. But now, he could only rely on alchemical pills and spirit base to absorb the power, which was really too little. But who asked him to break through to 10 nuclei? This gave him great power, so he naturally had to pay a corresponding price. Shwa, Ling Han not only swallowed medicinal pills, but also took out the 4 transformations pill that could only be used by gushing spring tier to increase cultivation level, to provide the terrifying energy needed to liquefy the super origin nucleus into a spring. Other people's origin nuclei turned into a spring one after another, and the last one was at the 9th layer of gushing spring tier. At that time, there would be 8 origin power springs to provide power, and one only needed to comprehend the cultivation level. The energy needed was a piece of cake. However, this one origin nucleus of Ling Han was actually bigger than the 9 origin nuclei of the others put together. Moreover, it was not just a little bit bigger, because every large origin nucleus of his was composed of 5 small origin nuclei, so there was a total of 45 origin nuclei. The energy needed was like an ocean. Eat. Ling Han continuously swallowed 4 transformations pill. Pa, under the impact of the violent energy, his skin cracked, his blood vessels burst open, and large amounts of blood seeped out. 4 transformations pill was used by gushing spring tier to increase cultivation level, and taking it now was practically suicide. Even the body of dead tree couldn't withstand such an impact. Lone Wolf's blood, activated. Indestructible Heaven Scroll, activated. His body was rapidly recovering, but at the same time, he was continuously injured by the violent medicinal impact. Such pain wasn't something an ordinary person could bear, but Ling Han didn't even frown, only gritting his teeth and bearing it. How could it be a smooth road to climb to the peak of martial art? If he couldn't even bear this bit of pain, what was there to talk about shattering the void and becoming a god? Moreover, the greater the difficulty of breaking through, the greater the power that could be obtained after breaking through. This was obviously proportional. This time, the Black Tower didn't help, and only floated lightly in his dantian, with a strange light surging. Ling Han was neither joyful nor sorrowful. He merely continued to attack. Dripping water could penetrate stone, and under his continuous efforts, the origin nucleus finally began to liquefy. The entire origin nucleus dissolved, turning into a small spring with origin power surging and spewing out origin power. Success! Ling Han didn't stop. The spring had just opened, and he needed to stabilize his tear, or else this spring would quickly dry up and turn back into an origin nucleus, returning to the poly tear. But at this step, there was no difference from a normal gushing spring tear. Expanding the spring to the limit, the next step would be to form a sea of origin power, and that was the spiritual ocean tier. Other people needed to transform origin nuclei into spring eyes, then link 9 spring eyes into one, expanding into a sea, but Ling Han only had one origin nucleus, and could only form one spring eye, so how would his tier be calculated? Ling Han couldn't help but think that he'd probably always be treated as the first layer of gushing spring tier. Who cares? What I need is strength. The mouth of the spring opened and continued to expand, only stopping when Ling Han's soul power was exhausted. Gushing spring tearwang, the Black Tower spun lightly, as if it was releasing some kind of signal. Countless veins on the tower's body shone, forming one ancient character after another. Chapter 230. Wang, a small black tower appeared, floating in front of Ling Han. Black Tower. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. Since seeing the Black Tower 10,000 years ago, this was the second time he saw it with his own eyes, making him sigh as if he'd lived 2 lives. Wrong, I'm not the Black Tower you saw 10,000 years ago, but the spirit of the Black Tower. This small tower seemed to be able to hear Ling Han's thoughts, and actually swayed lightly, sending out a thought that directly entered Ling Han's consciousness. What? Ling Han was shocked and said, "You're the spirit of the tool, then where am I?" "Of course inside the Black Tower," Small Tower said. Ling Han was a bit confused, and said, "The Black Tower is in my dantian, but I'm inside the Black Tower, how is that possible?" "Look at your dantian again," Small Tower said. Ling Han looked inside his dantian, but found that it was already empty, without the existence of the Black Tower. "You entered inside the Black Tower, so the Black Tower is naturally in your original world," Small Tower said indifferently. In reality, its tone was flat, without a trace of emotion. "Who knew?" Ling Han was shocked. He had seen the size of that Black Tower before, and it even possessed supreme might. A flash of light was enough to kill him, who was in the heaven tier in his last life, and Hun Yo was meditating right next to him. Would she be directly crushed to death? Even if she wasn't crushed to death, with the little girl's wild nature, she'd definitely pounce and bite fiercely, and the consequences would be unthinkable. "Don't worry, after you enter the Black Tower itself will turn into a grain of sand in the vast ocean, no different from dust, and no one can think of anything different," Small Tower said with the tone of a dead person. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief, then patted his head, and ridiculed, "Why did a spirit suddenly come out to talk to me? I didn't find it strange at all." "Wait, you mean, I'm inside the Black Tower?" Ling Han suddenly reacted. "Yes," Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han instantly opened his mouth wide, and said, "How is this possible? Since the Black Tower can turn into a speck of dust and still have a tool spirit, that means it's a spirit tool." In that case, the space it forms should be the same as a spatial ring. How can it store living things? The space here has formed a world of its own, so it's only natural that living creatures can be collected. What's so strange about that? Small Tower asked calmly. Ling Han was surprised at first, but then a look of wild joy appeared on his face. The Black Tower could contain living creatures, and it could also transform into a speck of dust. What did this mean? As long as he encountered danger, he could enter the Black Tower, just like how Rong Huanxian could hide in the copper coffin. The difference was that the internal space of the Black Tower was who knew how many times larger. Furthermore, it could also be infinitely small, so enemies would not know what was happening at all, and would only think that he could teleport. Divine item, this was definitely a divine item. He had never heard of a space container that could not only contain living things, but could also change its size. Also, he's wearing a space ring. One had to know that space containers could not be stacked together, which meant that one space container could not be stored in another space container. But now that he was inside the Black Tower, he was still wearing a space ring, which meant that the two could be stacked together. Can I bring others in? Ling Han asked. Yes. How do you do it? Small Tower transmitted a thought to Ling Han, teaching him how to bring other things, including living people and living creatures, into the Black Tower. The key was that if it was a living creature, it couldn't have the thought of resisting, or else he could only first knock the other party unconscious. Xiao, Ling Han's figure flashed, and he already appeared in the forest outside. Hunyao was looking around blankly, and when Ling Han appeared, she immediately pounced on him, and said, "Why couldn't Niao find you just now?" Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, "I'll bring you to a place, don't resist." Oh. Hunyao nodded, not really understanding. Ling Han grabbed Hunyao, and with a thought, he and Hunyao had already appeared inside the Black Tower according to the divine sense that Small Tower had transmitted over. Wah! Hunyao revealed a surprised expression, and couldn't help but spread out her arms, running in this spacious world. As she ran, she giggled, extremely cheerful. Can you see what's strange about this little girl? Ling Han asked Small Tower. Small Tower trembled lightly, as if shaking its head, and said, "I suffered a great injury, and no longer have any memories of the past." What? Ling Han exclaimed in shock. The Black Tower shook lightly, and he, a former elite of Heaven tier, was turned into ashes. However, this kind of god tool was actually heavily damaged, and even its past memories no longer existed. Then, who could have caused this? I have a vague feeling that my existence will attract many people's greed, so before you have absolute strength, you must not reveal my secret, Small Tower said indifferently. Ling Han nodded. Not to mention the Black Tower, just the indestructible Heaven Scroll was extremely important, and he wouldn't reveal any secrets even if he was beaten to death. However, you're really called the Black Tower? He asked. Small Tower trembled lightly, and said, "I've already lost all memories, even forgotten my name." Ling Han couldn't help but feel depressed. He originally thought that after breaking through to Gushing Spring tier, he could understand the secrets of the Black Tower, but he didn't think that other than an additional castle that could be carried, there didn't seem to be any other changes. Of course, this castle was enough to make Shattering Void tier elites jealous, and obtain it at all costs. The Black Tower has a total of 9 floors, and as long as your strength is sufficient, you can open them accordingly. Each floor has different functions, Small Tower said. Ling Han immediately revealed a happy expression, and said, "What functions do they have?" "I've already lost my memories, so I can only obtain the relevant information after you open a floor of the tower," Small Tower said unhurriedly. "So, I can only tell you the functions of this floor now." It paused, and said, "The first floor is a medicinal garden. The spirit herbs planted here, 1 year is equivalent to 1,000 years. Pooh! Ling Han instantly spluttered. 1 year was equivalent to 1,000 years, then if I wanted a 1,000-year-old ginseng, wouldn't I only have to wait for a year?